In the newsroom, it's the biggest bloodbath since the overthrow back in February of Hosni Mubarak. Shots fired, armored vehicles running over Coptic Christian demonstrators Sunday as they marched through central Cairo to protest the partial destruction of a church in Aswan province. At least 24 killed. At funerals this Monday, mourners from the Arab world's largest Christian community demanded answers, and also for the head of Egypt's caretaker junta to speak. The ruling military council has promised a full inquiry into violence that involved demonstrators, soldiers, and also Muslim radicals that attacked marchers who included both Christians and Muslim pro-democracy activists. We're going to try to piece together what happened Sunday evening and ask, is change in Egypt really leaving the door open for sectarian strife? Today, in the France 24 debate, Egypt, why the violence? And joining us is from Washington, Walid Phares of National Defense University. Always a pleasure to have you, sir. Walid Phares, can I get your reaction to what those citizens in Cairo were saying?
Well, you have 2 points, Francois, at least. One is how the international media and other media in the region are framing the issue by using the term clashes. I mean, it started with AP and all the way to the other agencies. When we hear clashes, we imagine either two mobs equally, weaponized with sticks fighting against each other, or two armies or two militias. What we saw on the screen was not that. We saw a demonstration of Copts, tens of thousands. Yes, they were throwing rocks, but we saw actually the Egyptian armed forces moving against them, and dozens were killed. And from the lateral streets, there were also either shots or knives being used against the demonstrators, who indeed burned other cars. I think this has to be designated as crackdown on a demonstration rather than clashes. Number two, the incident did not begin only this time because of that church. What the Copts have been saying in their NGOs worldwide is that this is an explosion of feelings and anger after many incidents, and many of your guests have recognized that these incidents have been taking place since the beginning of the year, since the beginning of the revolution, and even before that. So what we have right now is frustration from a community that they have been attacked by those extremist elements, you want to call them Salafists or jihadists, and the government is not doing anything about it. And when they demonstrated, that is the Copts, for the governments to do something about it, they launched the army against them. So here we have a two-pronged issue. One is that there are extremists acting against a community despite the revolution, and two, the armed forces of the government, which was supposed to be emanating from the revolution, has launched its forces against the demonstration, something that has not even happened in Tahrir Square during the peak of the revolt. That's why I consider it's very serious.
Foreign hands. Walid Phares, what do you think he's referring to?
Well, this reminds me and reminds all of us how when the Mubarak regime was around and there were the demonstrations, what did the Mubarak spokesperson said? Do you remember? Foreign hands. It's always foreign hands. That's where we go when we don't want to be clear, when we want to be abstract. If these were foreign hands, 100,000 Coptic demonstrators, and then incidents across Egypt for the last 9 months, I mean, that would be pretty foreign hand. Reality is that the government of Egypt, which is now preparing for elections, which should happen, should be responsible in determining who is attacking this one specific community, who gave the orders to the army to engage with their vehicles against them, and who was sniping from the sides, and who is doing the bombing. If all of these were foreign hands, that is not a clear answer. I feel that the government is concerned and is afraid to identify the attackers, because that would engage this government in much bigger clashes with people who have weapons. I mean, the Copts do not have weapons. They may have sticks, but they are not an organized force. So the government is trying to say there are no incidents in Egypt. This is a foreign hand. The Copts should, cool off, and then let's go towards the election, and maybe we can have a solution in the future. My fear is that elections may happen, but the incidents may not be discontinued. It may continue. So it has to be addressed now.
Walid Phares, the junta trying to drag its heels. You agree with Dina Zakaria?
Well, look, there is another myth going on here, which is relationship between Christians and Muslims. Well, the issue is not about Christians and Muslims in Egypt. We saw it in January and February, that those who took to the streets were Muslims and Christians. It's an ideological faction within Egypt and the military regimes who are behind those problems and have to be questioned. The Copts are not saying we are attacked by the Muslims. The Copts are saying that there are extremists attacking our churches. And they are saying that the military regime or junta or council, one, is not doing enough to protect us. And when we wanted to express ourselves and go to Tahrir Square or any other street, they actually crushed us. So the first issue here, the test for the military is simple. If you, military, have brought down Mubarak because of 1 million people in Tahrir Square, when 100,000 Copts take to the streets, why do you crush them? Let them demonstrate. That would be the test that you are basically going to be balanced. And this is what I think the international community, including the United States and the European Parliament, are going to be asking the Military Council.
And how do you explain it?
I think that inside the Military Council, they have two fears or two concerns. One is the next elections are going to form a government. They are unsure if that government is going to maintain their privileges or not. That's a very clear issue. In order to maintain those privileges, they have to cut deals with the political forces they feel are coming to power. So one of the deals in those privileges is not to go against those extremists when they attack the Copts because of ideological reasons. That's the only reason I can see. Why is it that the powerful military of Egypt is not going and shutting down the Salafi terrorist or extremist operation? Everybody in Egypt, or the consensus in Egypt, is against those extremists, both Christians and Muslims. There must be a reason behind that.
Walid Phares, I know you penned an article where you were very critical of the Obama administration, saying it's settled for an Egypt share between the military and the Islamists. Are Sunday's tragic events a wake-up call?
Well, of course they are, and not just for the Copts. What we see now, we saw are incidents where the Copts were suppressed. I'm concerned for the majority of Muslims who are moderates who in the future may also find themselves in similar situations.
Has Washington heard that wake-up call?
I think there is going to be a big debate. Today is a holiday in Washington, but I think that this week between Congress and the administration there's going to be a lot of talking. Remember, the United States provides billions of dollars in support, not just to Egypt in general, but to the armed forces. And the pictures that the American citizens have seen over the weekend are not really positive.
All right, Walid Phares, I want to thank you for joining us from Washington.